This is Mac OS Ken.
The EU charges Apple with DMA violations. Bloomberg says Apple is not talking to Meta about AI. And a Vision Pro bug that could have filled your space with virtual bugs. It is Tuesday, the 25th of June, 2024. I don't know about you, but I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken. Brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years with special offers for Mac OS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/MacOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. The first gatekeeper has been charged by the European Union for violating the Digital Markets Act, and you'll never guess which one it was. The Wall Street Journal says the governing body has charged Apple with failing to comply with the new digital competition law, alleging that the iPhone maker's App Store isn't allowing developers to freely direct customers to alternative ways to make purchases. Kind of hard to argue that they do, since, they don't. Freely directing customers would involve something like putting a link in the app's App Store description saying, "Go to developerwebsite.com to pay less for this app," or words to that effect. Instead, Apple requires special links and a cut of sales, even the ones that happen outside the App Store. I'm not saying whether that's wrong on Apple's part. I'm just saying it doesn't feel as much like an allegation as a statement of fact. The App Store isn't allowing developers to freely direct customers to alternative ways to make purchases. Still, Apple thinks it's operating within regulation. In a response to the charges, the Journal had Apple saying it's made changes in recent months to comply with the DMA and that it is confident its plan complies with the law. They'd best hope so, since failure to comply could cost Apple as much as 10% of its worldwide revenue. That said, the piece says the EU said the charges against Apple represent a preliminary view that the company breached the DMA and don't necessarily mean it will ultimately be found to have broken the rules. It said Apple would have an opportunity to examine its findings and respond to them. The EU is also investigating other parts of the App Store business, including the charge charged by Apple for sales made outside the App Store. A final decision from the European Commission on Apple's compliance, or lack thereof, is expected by late March of next year. Even before the EU's allegations against Apple on Monday, questions were being raised about iPhone upgrade prospects and regulations in Europe. I told you yesterday of Apple's assertion that it was holding back features like iPhone mirroring, SharePlay screen sharing, and Apple Intelligence in the EU over Digital Markets Act worries. A piece from Bloomberg had the company saying, "We are concerned that the interoperability requirements of the DMA could force us to compromise the integrity of our products in ways that risk user privacy and data security." That got JP Morgan analyst Samik Chatterjee wondering what effect, if any, that would or will have on iPhone upgrades. Negligible this year seems to be his thinking. Like a growing number of analysts, Chatterjee does not expect a super cycle this year. Rather, he's looking for a couple of years of sustained iPhone growth driven by Apple Intelligence. Apple 3.0 had him saying in a note, "We expect year one of an anticipated 2-year stair-step volume ramp to be relatively unaffected by the dynamics in the European Union market, and expect that there is ample time to resolve the challenges in fiscal year 25 before it can impact the forecasts relative to year 2 of the upgrade cycle in fiscal year 26. It seems he's looking for more of a mini cycle here in the States for year 1. Pulling a few points from his note, North America will be the primary contributor in the AI upgrade cycle, followed by China. North America alone can help meet year 1 expectations of the upgrade cycle. Year 2 upgrade cycle is more contingent on EU and China in his firm's view. Mr. Chatterjee has an overweight rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $245. Remember that talk yesterday of Apple looking to possibly fold Meta's LLM into Apple Intelligence? Mark Gurman says you can forget it. The Wall Street Journal ran a piece over the weekend saying that Apple and Facebook's parent company have held talks about potentially integrating Meta's generative AI model into Apple Intelligence. Now Bloomberg says that is news worthy of wrapping fish in. Quoting that report, Apple rejected overtures by Meta Platforms to integrate the social networking company's AI chatbot into the iPhone months ago, according to people with knowledge of the matter. Gurman goes on to say the two companies are not in discussions about using Meta's Llama chatbot in an AI partnership, and only held brief talks in March, said the people who asked not to be identified, because the situation is private. So there's that. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years. If fountain pens are a thing with which you don't know where to start, you are the person for whom we made the starter boxes at penchalet.com/macOSKen. They include a Lamy Safari or a Pilot Metropolitan, both great pens for beginners, a Rhodia tablet, and some good ink to get you going. Find those at penchalet.com/macOSKen. Now they've still got one of my favorite pens on special for macOSKen listeners, the Conklin Endura Deco Crest. I'll tell you, this is the closest thing I've ever had to a Grail pen. It's got a styling that harkens back to the 1920s. The body is resin, hand-turned and hand-polished in blue or orange. It's accented with a beautiful, ornate metal overlay, rose gold for the blue, gunmetal for the orange. I've had my gunmetal in orange for about 1.5 years now, usually inked, always on display. I told Pen Chalet that it was the first fountain pen that I ever coveted, and they have made it available to you at a discount at penchalet.com/macOSKen. So there are starter boxes, there's a load of other specials, and there is the code MOK10, which will get you 10% off other purchases outside of those great deals. Find the pen for you at penchalet.com/macOSKen. And a huge thanks to Pen Chalet for sponsoring today's show. Assuming developers have recovered from their WWDC overloads and hangovers, there is new stuff for them to play with. Or updated stuff. Mac Rumors ran a few pieces on Monday saying Apple has seeded second betas of iOS and iPadOS 18, macOS Sequoia 15, watchOS 11, tvOS 18, and visionOS 2 to developers. Members of Apple's developer community, you know what to do. Everybody else, sit at their feet and gaze in wonder. Don't gaze at their feet, though. That would be weird. What's going on at Apple's $1 billion campus in North Carolina's Research Triangle Park? Not a blessed thing, according to the Triangle Business Journal. 3 years after Apple announced plans to develop a huge campus with thousands of workers in the development zone, the report says the site remains quiet, even as the company continues to hire in the region. The piece cites a little work on the site. A stormwater management permit for a gravel pad has been finalized, and power has been brought to the edge of where Apple's campus would be. Other than that, nothing seems to have happened at the location, and may not for a number of years, according to a local TV report. And yet the deal is not dead. While the Cupertino company did not respond for the Biz Journal's piece, local TV station WRAL did get a statement from the company. macOS Ken listener Matthew sent me a link to the story out of Raleigh right after this story was initially written. The later report had the company saying, Apple has been operating in North Carolina for over 2 decades, and we're deeply committed to growing our teams here. We're looking forward to developing our new campus in the coming years. It could be as many as 4 years from now, according to the report. While the Tar Heel State offered Apple a number of incentives to build the campus, requirements for those incentives are likely being met thanks to staffing at other locations. The Triangle Business Journal report says Apple has been hiring heavily in Cary and at a temporary space in Durham. The piece says it still is, according to Apple's employment site. Apple is doing a premium thing with a podcast it's producing. Engadget ran a piece Monday that was less about the show than the business model. I guess we could start with the show, though. In a press release, Apple says the show, My Devo, has award-winning journalist Maria Garcia looking at the life and legacy of Mexican pop icon Juan Gabriel. Hailing from the same hometown as Gabriel, the podcast has Garcia looking to his legacy as she tries to reconcile with her own identity, re-examining their similarities within their Mexican heritage. The release says My Devo explores Juan Gabriel's personal life and public persona, discovering new important details about his life, including how his sexuality was perceived and the impact it had on his legacy. As for the business model bit, Engadget says this is Apple's first premium podcast with early access available to Apple TV Plus subscribers. That's through a feature Apple refers to as Apple TV Plus Connected Subscription. This time around, that basically means letting you binge. Available in both Spanish and English, the first 2 episodes will be released globally on Monday, the 1st of July. For non-Apple TV Plus subscribers, new episodes will follow 1 per week through the 8-episode series. Apple TV Plus Connected subscribers will get all 8 episodes on the 1st of July. Additionally, Apple's press release indicates that this will be the model for future podcasts from Apple TV Plus. And finally today, Apple has killed a Vision Pro bug that could have filled your space with virtual bugs. 9to5Mac ran a piece late last week highlighting the bug-hunting prowess of cybersecurity researcher Ryan Pickren. He found an issue that would allow pranksters, ne'er-do-wells, and or miscreants to fill a Vision Pro user space with, well, I guess whatever, with no easy way to get rid of whatever the virtual whatever was. Basically, according to Pickren, Apple defines an area that a developer can affect inside Apple Vision Pro's vision. If an app wants a more immersive experience, says the researcher, they must receive explicit permission from the user via an OS-level prompt that places them in a trusted, full space context. But there was an AR thing that Apple did in WebKit back in 2018 that's still there today, even in Vision OS. Safari does not enforce any type of permission model on this feature, according to Pickren. After getting a tiny bit technical, he explains, this means that we can launch an arbitrary number of 3D, animated, sound-creating objects without any user interaction whatsoever. If the victim just views our website in Vision Pro, we can instantly fill their room with hundreds of crawling spiders and screeching bats. Freaky stuff. And killing Safari did not kill the creepy crawlies, according to 9to5Mac. The good news, this issue has been fixed, and Pickren rewarded for his trouble. thought to be the first such flaw specific to Apple's spatial computer. The company has paid Pickering an undisclosed amount as a bug bounty. It has also patched the vulnerability. macOS Ken, brought to you by me, and sponsored by Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years with special offers for macOS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.